Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're jumping in the time machine, setting the dial straight for the 1980s to really get into the story of a home computer that was, well, about way more than just spreadsheets.
Yeah, we're talking stunning visuals, incredible sound, a machine that genuinely rewrote the rule book for digital entertainment at home.
Exactly. Today, we're exploring the Amiga. It burst onto the scene mid-decade and just completely changed what people thought was possible with home computing and especially gaming.
Consider this your express ticket to understanding how this real game changer shook things up.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. Early 80s, the home computer market's kind of cautiously picking itself up after that big video game crash in 83.
Right, there was definitely some nervousness around.
And you had the 8-bit heroes, the Commodore 64, Sinclair Spectrum, Apple 10. Fantastic machines for their time, no doubt about it.
Absolutely iconic.
But let's be honest, the graphics were pretty blocky, the color palettes were limited, and the sound was, let's say, basic.
Beeps and boops, mostly. That dream of getting arcade-quality action in your living room still felt pretty far off for most people.
Very far off. There was this hunger for something more, something truly immersive. And into this landscape stepped a group with a pretty radical vision.
Yeah, initially a company called High Toro Inc., founded back in '82. Key figures were Larry Kaplan, David Morse, and a name you'll hear a lot, Jay Miner.
Now, Kaplan left fairly early on, and the company eventually became Amiga Corporation. But Jay Miner, he's the one often called the father of the Amiga.
And he wasn't new to this game, was he? He had serious credentials.
Not at all. He'd already designed crucial chips for the Atari 2600 and the Atari 400, 800 computers. So, he understood how to push silicon for great graphics and sound.
What's interesting is that the initial idea, codenamed Lorraine, was actually for a next-gen game console.
Right. But the vision grew, didn't it?
It did. The team realized they could build something much more powerful, something that went beyond just games.
Exactly. They weren't just aiming for slightly better joysticks. They wanted a true personal computer, one that could ace games, sure, but also had serious chops for creative work.
And their core idea was pretty brilliant for the time. Custom coprocessors, dedicated chips specifically for graphics, for sound, for handling input and output.
This distributed architecture,
Yeah.
splitting the workload instead of dumping everything onto the main CPU.
It was incredibly forward-thinking. These specialized chips handled their tasks independently, and that became absolutely crucial later for the Amiga's multitasking and multimedia capabilities without grinding the whole system to a halt like other machines often did.
So this Lorraine project, the tech specs they were aiming for were just wild for the era.
Totally wild. We're talking a palette of 40, 96 colors. Compare that to the handful you got on most 8-bit machines.
It's night and day. Plus hardware sprites, smooth hardware scrolling, a dedicated blitter chip for manipulating graphics super fast.
And 4-channel stereo sound that could play back actual digitized samples. Not just synthesized tones, but real recorded sounds.
That was massive. But all this cutting-edge development, it wasn't cheap, was it?
Not even close. To keep the lights on, Amiga Core actually started out making peripherals for Atari systems, like the Joyboard controller.
Kind of ironic, developing for the competition to fund their own competitor.
Yeah, but even that wasn't enough. By 1984, they were in serious financial trouble. They needed a lifeline.
That's where Commodore enters the picture.
Exactly. Commodore was riding high on the massive success of the C64, and they were hunting for the next big hit.
They initially gave Amiga a loan, right, to keep Lorraine alive.
They did, but it quickly evolved. In August 1984, Commodore just went ahead and acquired the whole company.
And the timing within Commodore was interesting too, wasn't it? Jack Tramiel, the founder, had just left.
Right. New leadership was in place, eager to make a splash, and this futuristic Amiga technology looked like the perfect way to do it.
So, under Commodore's wing, Lorraine got polished up and launched as the Amiga 1000 in July 1985. A machine born from pushing boundaries.
Absolutely. A testament to innovative engineering, and now backed by Commodore's manufacturing muscle. It was ready to shake things up.
Okay, so we have this incredible machine. What really made it tick, it all came down to those custom chips. Let's break them down. First up, Agnes.
Agnes, the address generator unit. You can think of it as the systems conductor, coordinating a lot of the magic.
And inside Agnes were two really crucial components.
Yes, the blitter and the copper. The blitter, short for block image transfer, was a powerhouse for moving and manipulating blocks of graphics data in memory at incredible speeds.
So copying graphics, drawing lines, filling areas, Stuff that would bog down the main CPU on other systems.
The blitter handled it effortlessly. This was absolutely key for the smooth animation, scrolling, and complex visual effects you saw in Amiga games.
Okay, blitter makes sense. What about the copper? Sounds a bit more mysterious.
The copper was this really unique video coprocessor. Its special trick was that it could change display parameters, things like the color palette, screen resolution, even sprite positions on the fly, line by line, as the video beams scanned down the screen.
And it did this without bothering the main CPU.
Exactly. It allowed for all sorts of amazing visual tricks, those super smooth color gradients, displaying more colors than were theoretically possible at once, creating non-standard screen modes. It was seriously clever engineering.
Very cool. Okay, next chip, Denise.
Mhm.
The display-enabled chip. That was all about video output, right?
Spot on. Denise generated what you actually saw on the monitor. On the early Amigas, you could get 32 simultaneous colors from that big 4096 color palette in standard low-res mode.
And high-res mode.
That gave you 16 colors, but there was also this neat half-bright mode, EHB, which let you display 64 colors by using half-brightness versions of the base 32.
More colors meant richer, more detailed graphics, obviously. What else did Denise handle?
It also managed the hardware sprites, those small, independently movable graphics essential for games. The Amiga could handle up to 8 of them, 16 pixels wide each with either 3 or 15 colors.
Sprites. Crucial for action games.
Absolutely. And Denise was key to that incredibly smooth parallax scrolling you saw in so many Amiga games, giving that amazing sense of depth.
Got it. Okay, last of the main trio. Paula, ports, audio, UART, and logic. Sounds like a busy chip.
It definitely wore multiple hats, but Paula is probably most famous for the Amiga's incredible 4-channel, 8-bit stereo sound system.
This was the game changer for audio, wasn't it?
Oh, massively. Each of those 4 channels could play back digitized samples directly from RAM, independently, each with its own volume and sample rate control. This was a monumental leap from the basic sound chips in most other home computers and consoles at the time.
So no more just bleeps and bloops.
Exactly. Paula enabled rich, complex soundtracks, realistic sound effects, even digitized speech. It added so much to the atmosphere and immersion of Amiga games. And yes, it also handled stuff like the floppy disk access and serial parallel ports.
So it's this combination, this teamwork between Agnes, Denise, and Paula that was the secret sauce.
Pretty much, that custom hardware working together. But it wasn't just the hardware, was it? The operating system, Amiga S, was also a big deal.
Right. Amiga OS. What was special about that?
Well, crucially, it was one of the very first commercially available home computer operating systems with preemptive multitasking.
Okay, multitasking. Why was that important? Especially for, say, gamers.
It might not sound immediately thrilling if you just wanted to play games, but it had a huge impact on the system's overall responsiveness. Things could happen in the background without freezing everything up.
Like loading the next level from the disk while you were still playing the current one?
Exactly that kind of thing. It enabled some really innovative game design possibilities. Plus, you had the Workbench Graphical User Interface, the GUI, alongside a powerful command line interface for those who wanted to dig deeper.
So how did all this stack up against the competition back then? You mentioned the Atari ST, IBM PCs, the Mac.
Well, compared to the Atari ST, which also used a Motorola 68000 CPU and was popular with musicians for its built-in MIDI ports, the Amiga definitely had the edge in graphics and sound capabilities.
Yeah, PCs.
IBM PCs were still primarily business machines in the mid-80s. Their graphics and sound were generally way behind the Amiga until much later.
What about the Mac?
The Apple Macintosh had a great OS and that crisp monochrome display, but it was very expensive and definitely not positioned as a gaming machine.
And the consoles. NES, Master System.
Hugely popular for gaming, of course, but technologically much simpler and far less versatile. The Amiga really carved out this unique niche, delivering near-arcade quality visuals and sound at home, but with the power and flexibility of a proper computer.
And that power unleashed a real golden age for Amiga gaming, didn't it? I remember hearing Europe, especially with the Amiga 500 model, was a total hotspot.
Absolutely true. The A500 was incredibly popular across Europe, and it became the platform for just an amazing era of game development.
Yeah.
The visual and audio spectacles developers created were just stunning.
Like Psygnosis.
Yeah.
I remember Shadow of the Beast.
Oh yeah, Shadow of the Beast. That game was mind-blowing visually for its time.
Parallax scrolling.
Multiple layers of it, yeah. The incredibly detailed artwork and that haunting sample-rich soundtrack by David Whittaker, it was a system seller. It showed everyone what the Amiga could really do.
What else stands out from that era?
Well, there was Eric Chahi's Another World, using those rotoscope vector graphics for incredibly fluid animation and atmosphere, just unique. And its spiritual successor, Flashback, pushed that style even further.
And you had great action platformers, too.
Definitely. Factor 5's Turrican and Turrican Thur, pure run and gun action, huge levels, massive bosses, and those unforgettable soundtracks by Chris Hulsbeck. The smooth sprite handling just made the action feel so dynamic.
The Amiga wasn't just about action, though, right? Strategy and simulation saw innovation, too.
Oh, for sure. DMA Design's Lemmings was a global phenomenon. Such a unique puzzle concept, perfect mouse controls.
I lost so many hours to Lemmings.
Didn't we all? Then you had Bullfrog Productions pioneering the God game genre with Populous and Populous 2, and you can't forget Sensible Software.
Sensible Soccer.
Sensible World of Soccer. Looks simple from the top-down view, but unbelievably deep and addictive gameplay. And their war strategy game, Cannon Fodder, was so witty and fun. Plus great simulations like Stunt Car Racer or flight sims like EA's FA-18 Interceptor.
It really sounds like European developers were driving this Amiga gaming explosion.
They absolutely were. Companies like Team 17, Thalion, Psygnosis, DMA, Bullfrog, Sensible, they became synonymous with Amiga excellence. The affordability and widespread adoption of the A500 in Europe really fueled that creative boom.
And you mentioned something earlier, the Damascene.
Ah, yes, the Damascene. This was this incredible subculture of programmers, artists, and musicians dedicated to pushing the Amiga hardware to its absolute limits.
How so?
They created these non-interactive audiovisual demonstrations, demos, that often showcased effects commercial game developers hadn't even thought of, massive numbers of moving objects, complex 3D routines way before it was common, incredibly sophisticated music.
So it was like an underground R&D lab.
Kind of, yeah. It really pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. And a lot of talent from the Damascene eventually moved into the games industry, bringing that technical expertise and creative flair with them. You could definitely see that influence in games like Team 17's Project X or Kaiko's Gem X series.
It sounds like the Amiga wasn't just a games machine. It was a whole creative hub. And I know it made waves beyond gaming too, especially in video and graphics.
Absolutely. While games are what many remember most fondly, the Amiga fostered this really vibrant ecosystem for creativity across video, art, and music. And these areas often fed into each other. Take the video toaster from NewTek.
Ah, yes, the video toaster. I remember hearing about that. It basically turned an Amiga into a pro video studio, right?
Pretty much. Released for the Amiga 2000 and later models, it was this hardware and software combo that gave you affordable video switching, character generation, 2D, and even early 3D animation tools, and a whole suite of digital video effects.
Stuff that used to cost a fortune.
Exactly. Before the toaster, that kind of power was locked away in incredibly expensive broadcast equipment. It really democratized video production, bringing these tools within reach of smaller studios, even hobbyists. It was famously used for effects on shows like Babylon 5 and Sequest DSV.
And the 3D software that came with it? Lightwave.
Lightwave 3D, yeah. That spun off and became a major industry standard in its own right, long after the Amiga faded from the mainstream.
Incredible. What about digital art? Was there a key application there?
Oh, definitely. Deluxe Paint from Electronic Arts, or D-Paint as everyone called it, that was the killer app for artists on the Amiga.
What made it so special?
It was this incredibly intuitive yet powerful bitmap graphics editor that really leveraged the Amiga's color capabilities and those coprocessors. It became the go-to tool for creating 2D art and sprite animations for countless Amiga games. Features like color cycling, palette control, stenciling tools. They were groundbreaking at the time.
So many classic Amiga game graphics probably came out of D-Paint.
A huge number of them. So many artists and game devs got their start with D-Paint. And you can really see its influence in the distinct visual style of many Amiga games.
And the Amiga had a unique approach to music creation too, right? Something involving trackers.
That's right. Paula's 4 independent PCM sample channels totally revolutionized home computer music. It led to the development of tracker software programs like Ultimate Sound Tracker, Noise Tracker, Pro Tracker.
How did they work?
They let users arrange short, digitized sound samples across those 4 channels, almost like a spreadsheet for music. You could create really complex, high-quality music without needing traditional instruments or expensive synthesizers.
And this created a specific sound.
It did. The MOD file format became ubiquitous in the Amiga community, used heavily in games and demos. Composers like Chris Hulsbeck, Alistair Brimble, Bjorn Lynn, They created these iconic game soundtracks using trackers, giving Amiga games this really distinctive, often very rich, almost orchestral or electronic sound that was just leagues ahead of most other systems.
So you had video creators, artists, musicians all working on the same platform, influencing each other. It sounds like a really exciting creative time.
It truly was, and it highlights how the Amiga was so much more than just a games console. It was a genuine multimedia powerhouse that empowered a whole generation of creators.
It's kind of a bittersweet story, though, isn't it? Because despite all that innovation, the Amiga's time in the sun didn't last forever. What went wrong?
You're right. Despite its technological edge and passionate fan base, the Amiga's reign was eventually cut short by, well, a combination of factors, including some significant missteps by Commodore itself.
Like what?
One of the big issues was Commodore's somewhat chaotic approach to product development and marketing. They released this confusing flurry of different Amiga models, the A500 plus A600, A1200, A2000, A3000, A4000, even the CD-TV and CD32.
Yeah, that does sound fragmented.
It often felt like they lacked a clear strategy or target audience for each one. It fragmented the brand and sometimes even alienated existing users who felt left behind or confused about upgrades.
I remember hearing their marketing, particularly in North America, wasn't always great either.
That's a key point. In North America especially, Commodore really struggled to effectively communicate the Amiga's strengths compared to the increasingly dominant IBM PC compatibles and the Mac.
So it got pigeonholed.
It often got stuck being seen only as a games machine, limiting its appeal in the crucial business and education sectors where its multimedia capabilities could have really shown. PCs were successfully positioned as serious work machines that could also run games. Amiga's advertising was often inconsistent and didn't really hammer home what made it special.
And there were internal issues at Commodore, too.
Yeah, reports suggest there were management struggles, internal conflicts, and a critical lack of long-term investment in R&D to keep that technological edge sharp.
Meanwhile, the competition wasn't standing still, right? PCs were evolving fast, and the console wars were heating up.
Exactly. By the early 90s, PC graphics were getting much better with VGA, and sound cards like the Sound Blaster were starting to close that multimedia gap the Amiga had long enjoyed.
And the PC's open architecture.
Right. That meant lots of manufacturers, driving down prices and pushing hardware forward faster. Software developers, especially in the US, started prioritizing the much larger PC market. Games like Doom really showcased what cutting-edge PCs could do with 3D graphics, something the older Amiga architecture struggled with without major upgrades.
And consoles.
At the same time, you had the 16-bit console wars between Sega and Nintendo raging. The Genesis Mega Drive and the SNES were cheaper, simpler plug-and-play machines, had great arcade conversions, and benefited from really aggressive marketing.
Commodore did try to update the Amiga with the AGA chipset, didn't they, in the A1200 and A4000?
They did, yeah. In '92, they introduced the Advanced Graphics Architecture, or AGA. It brought improvements, better color capabilities, better graphics performance. The Amiga 1200 especially was a popular machine and saw some great games later in the Amiga's life.
But it wasn't enough.
For many, it felt like an incremental upgrade rather than the revolutionary leap needed to truly compete with rapidly evolving PC tech, especially in 3D, or the upcoming 32-bit consoles. By this point, Commodore's financial situation was also getting really precarious.
They even tried a console again, the CD32.
Yeah, the Amiga CD32 in '93, a 32-bit CD-ROM console based on the AGA chipset. It actually had some initial success in Europe, but component shortages, a lack of real killer exclusive titles, it ultimately wasn't enough to save the company.
And then the end came.
Yeah. In April 1994, Commodore declared bankruptcy.
Wow. Such revolutionary tech and creative energy ending like that, it really makes you think.
It does. The Amiga story is this fascinating mix of incredible innovation and, unfortunately, missed opportunities. It truly sparked a creative revolution.
So as we wrap up, here's something for you to ponder. How might the home computer landscape look today if Commodore had managed to navigate those turbulent times differently? What elements of the Amiga's genuinely innovative approach do you still see echoed in the technology we use now?
Those are great questions to consider. The Amiga's influence, even though it's not a mainstream platform anymore, is definitely still felt in many ways.
Absolutely. Well, that's our exploration for today. Join us next time as we unpack another fascinating piece of the digital world. Until then, keep those curiosity circuits firing.